data from. And the fact that it's within that data stream that is loosely defined as the alien wars and has tendency to support that as we go further. So maybe it's just an extraneous signal that just were to black out all the TV and everything for a few hours. And it's just this very large, strong signal from space, kind of a, sort of a sound version or a non-sound version, if you will, of all the electricity stopping in the movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah.
And it may just be sort of a big heads up without being too intrusive. We're just going to shut all your communications down for, 5 hours or something and then turn it back on. And everybody will be wondering, what's up?
When Serge Monast was writing Operation Bluebeam, which he died of a very strange heart attack before he got it published, but there are a few copies out of it. He was talking about a worldwide network, not only where they show, Jesus in the sky with diamonds and Mohammed and Mary and all of that, but it was a voice. It was a worldwide voice heard in every language of the world. And
it's awful hard to accomplish, but I'm not saying that couldn't be done, but from a technical viewpoint, that would be very impressive.
The aliens could do it, I would bet.
Yeah, it's actually a matter of tweaking consciousness in anything. You needn't actually produce sound per se. It doesn't mean, of course, that it's anything that is being proffered.
Oh, now we get into the fact that everything that I have ever been told by anyone, the aliens don't need to talk. They communicate telepathically.
So I've heard, and I've actually been in contact with a guy who claims to have worked in deep ops and have worked with space aliens or extraterrestrials. I always call all these guys space aliens. I perhaps shouldn't. But in any event, with non-speaking humans, and he does say that it is telepathic and that it's really cool and it makes you feel energized and euphoric almost.
Yes. The nurse that supposedly interviewed the alien that lived after the crash in Roswell, the alien communicated with her, taught her telepathy.
Yes, I think I know the book or the volume you're referring to, and I think that's a hoax. The language
I tend to agree with you, but I'm still going to interview the guy.
Yeah.
But because it's just fascinating.
It was well done, but the language doesn't represent how language was used at the time. There's current connotations that wouldn't have been used at the time of the supposed writing.
Right. And, of course, the fact that he destroyed the originals. Nobody destroys originals like that. No one.
Yeah, a little suspicious. Yep.
Yeah. So that's what got my hackles up, and of course he won't let me interview him. One of our writers at Rumor Mill is going to be the interviewer.
Okay.
So it's going to be very interesting. I'll be on the line and listening.
Right.
But it's going to be an interesting interview. I'll say that for it.
Well, I'm always impressed by language and what it reveals about what's going on in the background of the thinker and the producer of it. And like I say, there was a bunch of language in that particular volume that is not as it would have been in the 40s and the 50s. They just would not have used terms that way. They did not. And so you can analyze things what are known as SCED, which is subject knowledge elucidates the domain. And it forms a nice little background for you, and you can say, the language here is not as it would have been used 100 years ago.
Right. Getting into what you mean by meme. What is the contact meme?
Meme is a thought virus. It's a M-E-M-E, and it's not my term. It's generally used in linguistics, and it refers to a thought virus that seems to have a life of its own, for instance. So the alien abduction thing is a meme in the sense that people know it. All you have to do is say alien abduction, and you're dealing with the context. In a larger sense, you needn't supply a lot of details for it because the meme is usually well known by the people you're discussing it with.
Okay, and what did you see when you were looking out there? Oh, we'll get right back to contact meme on the other side of the break. This hour and a half has gone way too fast.
Just disappears, doesn't it?
It does. We are talking with Clif High, and you are listening to Radio RNN on the Micro Effect Broadcast Network, and we'll be back. Welcome back. This is Raylan Allen, and I'm the publisher of RumorMillNews.com. When you go to the front page, click through to the reading room because that's where all the hottest news is. We're talking with Clif High from the WebBot project, halfpasthuman.com. And Clif, I have to tell you, my computer crashed. Everything that could possibly go wrong during those 3 minutes went wrong.
Oh, no.
And I know that we were talking about the contact meme.
Yes.
But I can't remember where we left off. Do you remember?
Yeah, sure. We left off with a description of what a meme is, and that's the thought virus component. And we all have to acknowledge, especially us old farts here, that in our lifetime, say from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s of the last century and millennium, we've seen a huge increase in the generalized contact expressions in the media and all around us, movies, etc. Yeah, everybody used to produce science fiction movies all the time about space aliens, but just in general discourse, the whole concept of contact with beings other than ourselves as intelligence on this planet even has risen to very great degrees over these last 30 or 40 years. And it's now seemingly coming to something of a focus, at least within our work, around the middle to late part of 2011. And it, unfortunately, is underneath the umbrella of alien wars. I wish it was, alien picnic or something, but it didn't quite work out that way. However, it changes everything, and it brings up the issue of other labels. So, for instance, the minute we have contact, we have people rushing off to create free energy devices because they know the aliens use them, and therefore they're as smart as the aliens, and they think they can do it, and so on. That also changes everything else. The minute we have contact and the idea of free energy, there's no such thing anymore as, capitalists or communists. It just doesn't exist. We're all universalists because anybody can have anything they want through the virtue of the free energy. And so capitalism, which is one form of dealing with scarcity, and communism, which is another form of dealing with scarcity, go away because we don't have scarcity as an overriding issue. And so also probably the idea of nation states will fade over time because if you can live anywhere on the planet you want and take your energy with you, and maybe giant floating motorhome kind of concept, then really where do you decide you have your allegiance? And with the technology that comes from contact, we also get the idea of potentially the elimination of a need of a healthcare system because maybe there's other ways of dealing with it, right?
Right.
So, in fact, the Russians seem to be well into this, and those parts of the planet that are into contact, that is to say, into the open phase of dumping all their records on the Internet, and the Russians are just being marvelous about this, and especially, and this will be interesting for you, Ray, is that they're doing it through their Navy. Curious, eh?
Well, I have one of the things my readers know, but maybe not these listeners know, is my husband, who was very high in what we call the secret Navy, told me that all the navies of the world are connected.
Correct.
And that's the opposition to the New World Order, lives in the navies of the world.
And it's just curious. I'm a small boat sailor myself, so I have an affinity for all these people out there trucking about in ships on the water.
Oh, I do too. I really admire the Navy.
Yeah, and it's just curious to me that, of course, that it seems that we find within our data sets some justification for what you've just expressed. Not only that the navies of the world are somewhat more united than someone might give them credit for, and many of them see themselves as a part of a single body that we might call Oceania that has a few islands, North America and Europe in it, that kind of thing, right? But also
that's true.
Yeah, and many of them also see themselves as, if you will, a slightly different breed of critter than land-based minions. And so we've got a curious thing where the Russian Navy and their space group is more under the control of their Navy than their Air Force, unlike ours. And they're releasing more and more of their records through their Navy. But it also looks like they're using many of the technologies in some of their new devices. For instance, a number of years now, their cosmonauts have been given this device called the Skinar, which is a little healthcare device that provides analytic abilities, can kill pain, and so on. And now it has this new technology built into it called the Cosmotic, which affects humans at an energetic level. And it actually causes changes in the body through the introduction of small, very regulated and controlled certain kinds of electrical interaction, very much like a TENS device 2 or 3 generations removed. And so we're seeing within the Russians also a lot of really cool rumors that they're adapting what we might want to think of as contact level technology into ordinary sorts of things. So, for instance, there's a big push in some of the Russian literature now that they're going to be potentially releasing sonic refrigerators. And this sonic refrigerator is nothing new. We have inventors all over the U.S. and elsewhere that are doing it. But their approach uses basically a small little engine that has no moving parts and can be run off of a couple of AA batteries for, from what I hear, days, 18 or 20 days. So imagine running your refrigerator for 18 or 20 days on a couple of AA batteries.
Well, sonic, that sound, how in the world can you run a refrigerator on sound?
Well, bear in mind that that basically refrigerators work now by, they don't really cool so much as they extract moisture from the air in an evaporative process. And so by extracting moisture, you extract latent heat, and that causes the air to be cool, and they use a compressor to compress fluids and expand fluids, and it's this compaction of a fluid into or gas into a fluid state, and the release of it that extracts the heat from the inside of the box. Now, the sonic refrigerators work in a different manner. Basically, what they do is that they broadcast out a sound wave of a very specific modulated frequency, and we're not talking, a single note. We're talking a very complex harmonic that actually causes the molecules of the air that are within the device's framework to become chilled in the sense of behaving as though they were cold. And since the molecules behave as though they were cold, they in essence manifest coldness.
That is just amazing.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. You won't believe the stuff they're doing.
Oh, God. One thing I want to say about the Russian Navy or about all the navies is the hierarchy of the Navy is the submarines are where the, like the super intel, where the CIA would live. They live in the submarines. And I believe, I have never been told this, but I believe the reason for this is the men in the submarine corps are the ones who have been given permission by the aliens who have bases at the bottom of the ocean to bring their submarines in to the alien bases.
May well be the case. We'd have no way of knowing, but I sure know that the Russian submarine force is state-of-the-art and is perhaps in many ways superior to our own and perhaps anything on the planet.
Well,
the rumors are from their own literature that they're making single pour solid titanium hulls that are absolutely pressure-proof at any pressure, and that they're doing this using a energetic technology that allows them to pour titanium at room temperature, and that they can do this in a manner that provides basically that the submarine's hull is one single titanium crystal.
Well, I can imagine that the Russians are mad as hell at whoever it was, and it had to be either Britain or the United States or the Mossad that took out the Kursk. Yeah. The Kursk was the largest submarine ever built. It was destroyed, I think, on its maiden voyage.
It was a strange situation there. And the Russians get a lot of grief, and they've, from the rest of the planet, that is undeserved.
Mm-hmm.
And, for instance, it's really curious to me that the most productive planetary food supply system in the planet, in all of history, was destroyed by the Bolshevik Revolution when it was not able to be purchased. Basically, that was what they were attempting to do. A small group of bankers were attempting to purchase vast quantities of the Russian agricultural system from the czars. That didn't work. And so we then have the Bolshevik Revolution, coincidentally, shortly thereafter. Just as we have Cheney trying to buy his way through Afghanistan with pipelines and so forth, and that didn't work. And then a few years later, we have the instance of 9/11 as a reason for him to go and bomb and take over Afghanistan.
Yes.
So, coincidentally, whether it's tied to it directly or not is immaterial, but the largest production of food ever occurred was in the pre-Bolshevik Revolution, privatized Russian agricultural system of small villages. True, there was a lot of suffering under the czars and so forth, but nonetheless, in the latter years, under a slightly more liberal czarist introduction of the Duma, we have a system that was feeding the planet in wheat and could continue to do so today. So the Russians have a whole lot going for them, and in the thing that leapfrogged them over us was the period of time that they were under the enforced Cold War problems.
Absolutely.
And then it was said if you